I wish I could give you more time than I can because I think you're a cold-blooded killer.
Get the off.
From a 14-year-old who ended a life just to have some pizza to a mother who stood in court for brutality, murdering her husband during a heated argument. Here are the most disturbing courtroom moments that you'll regret watching. Case number 1, Reginald Lofton.
I wish I could give you more time than I can because I think you're a cold-blooded killer.
Imagine ordering a pizza, expecting a regular night, only for it to end in a brutal crime. That's exactly what happened to 28-year-old Shane Varnador, a hard-working pizza delivery driver in Lawrenceville, Georgia. But what makes this case even more disturbing, one of the people responsible was just 14 years old. On March 1st, 2016, Varnador was lured to an apartment complex with a fake pizza order. As soon as he arrived, he was shot in the stomach and left to die. The attackers, Reginald Lofton, 14-year-old boy, and his accomplice, 21-year-old Jermaine Young. And what do they take? Just a few pizzas. Now, here's where it gets even more chilling. After the murder, Lofton calmly walked back to his apartment, carrying the stolen pizzas. Later, when police searched his place, they found the murder weapon hidden inside a box of pancake mix. At this trial, prosecutors presented damning evidence. Lofton's phone had been used to order the pizza and communicate with Young before and after the crime. And just hours before the murder, Lofton posted a picture of himself holding the same gun used in the shooting. The defense tried to argue that Lofton was just a kid, easily influenced by Young. But the jury didn't buy it. In court, emotions ran high as Lofton addressed the courtroom.
I just want to say that I'm sorry for your loss, but I did not kill your son.
Vandador's mother broke down while identifying her son in a photograph. And when the judge delivered the sentence, life in prison, he looked Lofton straight in the eyes and said, "I wish I could give you more time because you're a cold-blooded killer."
I wish I could give you more time than I can because I think you're a cold-blooded killer.
But if you thought taking a life over a slice of pizza was the craziest thing ever, just wait until you see this next dysfunctional case. Case number 2, Chad Doerman.
Chad, I trusted you with my life. And honestly, I looked up to you more than anyone. I saw you as my dad.
On June 15, 2023, in Monroe Township, Ohio, a horrifying tragedy unfolded that would forever scar the community. Chad Doerman, 33-year-old father, committed an unthinkable act by taking the lives of his 3 young sons, 7-year-old Clayton, 4-year-old Hunter, and 3-year-old Chase. That afternoon, Doerman returned home early from work and gathered his family in the master bedroom under the pretense of taking a nap. Nearby was a gun safe containing a Marlin Model 8C-22 rifle, the weapon he would soon use to carry out his deadly plan. After laying down briefly, Doerman retrieved the rifle, loaded it, and initiated a brutal sequence of events. He first shot Hunter twice as the boy's mother tried to intervene, screaming for the other children to flee. His teenage stepdaughter witnessed the initial shooting and ran to help. Urging her brothers to escape, Doerman chased down Clayton, shooting him multiple times as he fled. The stepdaughter then attempted to carry Chase to safety but was confronted by Doerman, who demanded she put the child down. When his rifle initially misfired due to being out of ammunition, Doerman reloaded and fatally shot Chase. All 3 boys died at the scene. When deputies arrived, they found Doerman sitting on the steps of his residence with a rifle beside him. He reportedly confessed to the killings, stating, "I did it. Take me to jail." Doerman admitted to having contemplated the murders for months as far back as October 2022, plagued by persistent thoughts that had deprived him of sleep in the days leading up to the tragedy. Doerman had reportedly told his wife earlier that day, "This will be my last good meal," a chilling indication of what was to come. Neighbors and family members recalled his odd behavior in the days before the crime, including pacing the house while holding a Bible and muttering to himself, repeating the words, "Chad knows what's right." In August 2024, Doerman pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder and 2 counts of felonious assault for injuries caused to his ex-wife and former stepdaughter. By accepting a plea deal, he avoided the death penalty, but was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Clermont County Prosecutor Mark Tekolb stated he won't see the light of day again.
I can only imagine that the terror that these little boys felt and experienced as their father, their protector, was murdering them. I mean, unfortunately, the mother saw this. You can imagine the immense trauma and terror that she experienced, and we will do our utmost within my office to see that this defendant never sees the light of day again.
The plea agreement was reached in consultation with the surviving victims to spare them the trauma of a trial.
As count 2, it'll be a life prison term without the chance of parole. And count 3, it'll be life in prison without the possibility of parole. These 3 counts and these 3 sentences will be served consecutively with one another.
Prosecutor Laura Barron Allen read the impact statements of his stepdaughter as Doberman sobbed uncontrollably.
Chad, I trusted you with my life. And honestly, I looked up to you more than anyone. I saw you as my dad, not just a stepdad. Because it hurts to know I will never get to experience another day with my 3 brothers, or to make any memories anymore, because their innocent lives were taken away so quickly and horribly by their own father.
The assurance that Doberman would spend the rest of his life in prison provided some measure of closure. And speaking of life sentences, you won't believe how far the convict in this next case went just to avoid one. Case number 3, Kyson Wilkins. Kyson Wilkins' case is a textbook example of courtroom deception gone wrong. In June 2008, Wilkins was on trial in Montgomery County, Ohio, facing multiple charges including felonious assault. But what made this case so bizarre wasn't just the charges, it was Wilkins' desperate attempt to avoid conviction.
Johnny, would you please ask the bailiff and the sheriffs to just go get a tree and bring it in here, just commence the hanging, let the lynching, you know, because this is a lynching. I mean, this is a modern day lynching. That's what it is.
You are not to speak, sir. Do not speak out in court again.
Wilkins had made the bold decision to represent himself in court, a move that often backfires for defendants. But things took an unexpected turn during his closing arguments. As he spoke, Wilkins suddenly clutched his chest, staggered, and collapsed onto the floor, pretending to suffer a heart attack right in front of the judge and jury. Deputies rushed to his side and medical personnel were quickly called in to assess his condition. But there was just one problem. Wilkins was completely fine. Paramedics trained to detect medical emergencies saw through the act almost immediately.
His breath appears to be quite normal. Doesn't appear to be labored in any way. Is that a fair assessment, sir?
Yes.
Not labored in any manner.
Yes, Your Honor.
To confirm their suspicion, they used smelling salts known for their strong, pungent odor to revive him. What happened next was caught on courtroom cameras. As soon as the salts hit his nose, Wilkins' eyes shot open and he stared directly at the officer administering them. The act was over. His so-called heart attack had been nothing more than a failed attempt to derail the trial.
Oh, a remarkable change. Thank you. Anything, Mr. Thompson? Mr. Wilkins, do you have any questions for this?
The judge was unimpressed. Recognizing the stunt as an obstruction tactic, he revoked Wilkins' right to represent himself and had him removed from the courtroom.
I have repeatedly advised you, sir, that you will lose your right to represent yourself because of your conduct. Do you understand that?
No, Your Honor, I don't.
Yes, you do understand it.
Thank you, everyone. You can remove Mr. Wilkins from the courtroom.
Instead of getting a mistrial, Wilkins was forced to watch the rest of the proceedings from another location. It didn't matter how much he tried to manipulate the system. Wilkins was found guilty on all charges. His convictions included improper discharge of a firearm, felonious assault, firearm specifications, and possessing a weapon while under disability. On top of that, he was labeled a repeat violent offender. And for the final verdict, Wilkins was sentenced to 42 years in prison. If you thought faking a heart attack attack in court was the height of courtroom chaos. Just wait until you see what happens when an 11-year-old steps into the spotlight with a plan so dark and left even the judge speechless. Case number 4, Quincy Tuttle. Quincy Tuttle's case is a chilling reminder of how close some schools have come to experiencing tragedy. In 2013, Tuttle, just 11 years old, was a 6th grader at Frontier Middle School in Vancouver, Washington. But what he was planning was far from child's play. Tuttle was accused of bringing a handgun, 400 rounds of ammunition, and multiple knives to school with the intention of killing 2 of his classmates. And the only reason this attack never happened was because of one person, his own mother. At home, Tuttle's mother noticed that several knives were missing. Alarmed, she immediately alerted the school. Administrators wasted no time. They acted swiftly, detaining Tuttle and preventing what could have been a horrific school attack. The investigation revealed that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Tuttle had been planning the attack for some time. Reports suggest he was driven by personal grievances against his intended victims, making the situation even more alarming. In court, things got tense. Tuttle's defense team argued that because of his age, he should be placed under house arrest with protective measures instead of being locked up. They claimed he needed rehabilitation, not confinement. But the judge didn't buy it. Given the severity of the charges and the danger posed to the public, the judge denied the request and sentenced him to 2 years in juvenile detention, a decision that sent Tuttle into a full-blown meltdown.
Counsel is correct that RCW 1340.040 directs the court in terms of deciding whether or not to continue holding him in detention, and if there's probable cause to believe that detention is required to protect him either from himself or that he's a threat to the community safety at large. I feel that at this point he needs to be held in order to protect him from himself and also to the community. So that's going to be my decision today.
Right there in the courtroom, Tuttle lost control. He shouted profanities, dropped the F word, and stormed out in a fit of rage. His explosive reaction left everyone in the room stunned, highlighting just how unpredictable and volatile juvenile offenders can be. This case stands as a stark warning. While most 11-year-olds are thinking about homework and video games, some are secretly planning violent attacks, and in this case, a mother's quick thinking may have saved lives. But if you thought Lofton's actions were outrageous, just wait until you see what this next convict did during a virtual court session. Case number 5, Anthony Lane. Anthony Lane's case is a perfect example of what not to do in a courtroom, especially when it's a virtual hearing. Lane, 36 years old, was facing serious drug charges in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The list included possession of methamphetamine, ecstasy, cocaine, and heroin, heavy charges that could lead to significant jail time. But instead of keeping a low profile and following the rules, Lane made a spectacular mistake during his virtual court hearing, where he was supposed to waive his right to a probable cause hearing and move his case to circuit court. Lane was seen casually smoking marijuana on the camera. Now, while recreational marijuana is legal in Michigan, there was just one problem. Lane's bond condition strictly prohibited him from using any drugs. Court staff immediately noticed and alerted the prosecutor, who brought it to the attention of Judge Cedric Simpson.
Will also waive the right?
Your Honor, I'll agree to waive, but I do want to make a statement on the record. It appeared that earlier in this time block that Mr. Lane was rolling a blunt and might have been smoking.
What happened next was a textbook case of courtroom self-sabotage. During the hearing, the prosecutor confronted Lane, not just about smoking, but also about his failure to comply with regular drug testing. Lane was supposed to test every 3 days, but admitted he hadn't been tested in 2 weeks.
Mr. Lane, you understand what's happening now?
Yeah.
When's the last time you tested?
2 weeks ago.
You were supposed to be testing 2 times per week.
I tested back to back.
Okay, but have you tested this week?
No, sir.
I'm also going to order that you're to report to Community Corrections today for a test.
Your Honor, I have no ride today.
Well, you better find somebody to get you a ride down here.
The judge gave him one last chance, ordering him to get a drug test that very day. But Lane, instead of complying, came up with an excuse. He didn't have a ride. That was it. Judge Simpson had heard enough. Lane's bond was revoked on the spot, and he was immediately rearrested. The judge ordered him to be sent to an official corrections facility for drug testing, ensuring that there would be no more excuses. Lane wasn't just caught breaking his bond conditions, he did it right in front of the judge's eyes. But Lane's actions in the courtroom were nothing compared to what happened in this next case, which will leave you absolutely stunned. Case number 6, Larry Darnell Gordon. On July 11, 2016, 44-year-old Larry Darnell Gordon, an inmate facing a potential life sentence, attempted a desperate and violent escape at the Barron County Courthouse in St. Joseph, Michigan, turning a routine court hearing into a scene of chaos and bloodshed. Gordon, who had been handcuffed in the front, was being escorted by Deputy James Atterbury Jr. from the courtroom to a holding cell when, in a sudden and forceful struggle, he managed to overpower the deputy and seize his firearm. With the stolen weapon in his grasp, Gordon did not hesitate to open fire, shooting Deputy Atterbury and leaving him injured before turning the gun on 2 court bailiffs, 63-year-old Ronald Kinzel and 61-year-old Joseph Zangaro, both of whom had rushed to intervene, only to be fatally shot in the process. In the midst of the gunfire, a civilian named Kenya Ellis was also struck and wounded, caught in the crossfire as terrified onlookers scrambled for safety. Some fleeing while others sought cover within the courtroom walls. Determined to escape at any cost, Gordon grabbed the woman and used her as a human shield, attempting to force his way out. But his path was quickly blocked by additional bailiffs who had drawn their weapons and were ready to neutralize the threat. Despite his efforts, Gordon had already emptied all 6 rounds from the stolen revolver, leaving him defenseless as responding officers fired a total of 13 shots, bringing the deadly standoff to an abrupt and final end as he collapsed lifelessly to the ground. In the aftermath of the shooting, authorities searching Gordon's jail cell discovered a handwritten letter that provided chilling insight into his mindset, in which he expressed regret for what he was about to do, but made it clear that he would rather die than spend the rest of his life behind bars, revealing that his actions were not impulsive, but rather a calculated, premeditated decision to avoid imprisonment at any cost. If you thought Gordon's courtroom chaos was the peak of desperation, just wait until you see this next case. Case number 7, Jeffrey Williams. Jeffrey Williams, a 19-year-old, was responsible for a tragic and senseless crime that led to the untimely death of 25-year-old Eugene Landon Jr., a devoted father whose life was cut short in an act of violence that shook his family and the community. The fatal incident took place at the Sunoco gas station on Detroit's west side, where Williams, driven either by desperation or recklessness, allegedly carried out an armed robbery and carjacking that ended in murder, leaving Landon fatally wounded before fleeing the scene in his stolen 1978 El Camino, a car that Landon had cherished. The sentencing hearing was marked by overwhelming grief and raw emotions as Landon's loved ones took the stand to speak about the man whose life had been stolen from them, painting a picture of someone who had been more than just a victim, but a dedicated father, a passionate car enthusiast who found joy in restoring vintage vehicles, and a man who was eagerly preparing for the birth of his second child, a child who would now never know their father. Among those who spoke was Landon's pregnant girlfriend, who had been there the night of the shooting and delivered a heartbreaking account of holding him in her arms as he took his last breaths, a moment that had shattered her world and left an unfillable void in her heart. The family, still grappling with their loss, did not hold back their anger, expressing the frustration over the fact that Williams had not received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, believing that justice had not been fully served.
What I don't understand is why you are not doing life without parole.
Throughout the proceedings, Williams remained cold and expressionless, never offering a single word of apology or any sign of remorse for the irreversible damage he had inflicted. His attorney acknowledged his association with the so-called Rich Boy Mafia, a local gang, although at the time of the murder, Williams had not yet been a full-fledged member, an argument that did little to sway the emotions of the courtroom. In the end, Williams was sentenced to a minimum of 28 years for second-degree murder, a punishment that, in the eyes of Landon's family, felt far too lenient, as they struggled to accept that the man who had taken Eugene's life would one day walk free while their loved one remained forever absent.
It's not sitting well with Landon's family.
We wasn't happy with it because we was hoping that he would get natural life, because we figured this.
If you thought this emotional turmoil from Jeffrey's murder was hard to sit through, wait until you hear what this next teenager did. Case number 8, Jacob Eind.
Because I just hate you. She goes, I wish you had never been born.
In December of 1992, 15-year-old Jacob Eind murdered his mother, Pamela Jordan, and his stepfather, Kermode Jordan, in their Woodland Park, Colorado home with help from his 17-year-old friend, Gabriel Adams. The attack was premeditated and brutal. Adams began by shooting the couple in their bed, but when they survived their initial shots, a violent struggle followed. Adams stabbed both victims repeatedly, and Jacob later used his stepfather's .357 Magnum revolver to deliver the fatal shots. Investigators described the crime scene as one of the most gruesome they had seen. Jacob was arrested the next day after boasting about the murders at school. During his trial in 1994, he claimed years of abuse from his stepfather and neglect from his mother had driven him to the act. His older brother supported the abuse claims, and psychiatrists testified that Pamela showed sadistic behavior. Still, prosecutors argued Jacob exaggerated the abuse to justify the killings.
And to this day, I consider it one of the more gruesome crime scenes I've ever seen.
The way he'd been treated by his parents, which doesn't justify killing him, but it was just awful. And I was appalled by.
The jury found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life without parole.
Verdict reads, we the jury find the defendant Jacob Eind guilty of first-degree murder.
His case drew national attention and sparked debate over juvenile sentencing, especially in cases involving abuse.
So I would have life mean life, but still have a parole eligibility review after 40 years. And if for a juvenile you want to change that to 20 or 30 years, I don't have a problem with that, frankly. But prosecutors deal with the laws as they are at the time that you have the case in front of you.
In 2017, Jacob was granted a new trial after a ruling found his rights were violated in the original proceedings. He took a plea deal in 2018, admitting to 2 counts of second-degree murder and conspiracy, and was resentenced in 2019 to 60 years with credits for time served. In prison, Jacob expressed remorse, referring to his actions as the coward's way out, but prosecutors have continued to question his sincerity. If Jacob Eind's case raised questions about motive and childhood trauma, this next case strips all that away. Case number 9, Robert Jones, Jr.
And the court hereby sentences the defendant to a mandatory prison term of 30 years to life for aggravated murder.
17-year-old Robert Jones Jr. was arrested for the cold-blooded killing of 75-year-old Take Gangloff at a bus stop on Norwood Avenue in Dayton, Ohio, on September 13, 2013. The incident happened during a botched robbery when Joan shot Gangloff in the head and fled the scene, leaving her body to be discovered by a passing RTA bus driver. He was charged with aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, intimidation of a crime victim, and attempted breaking and entering. Due to the brutal nature of the crime, he was tried as an adult. On July 2014, Jones pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 36 years to life in prison. The sentence included a mandatory 30 years to life for aggravated murder and an additional 3 years for a firearms specification, which had to be served consecutively.
And the court hereby sentences the defendant to a mandatory prison term of 30 years to life for aggravated murder and 3 years on the firearm specification to be served consecutively and prior to the 30-year life term on count 3.
At the sentencing, Jones claimed he was remorseful, stating he felt very sorry for what he had done to the victim.
Sorry for what I've done to the victim. And I feel very remorseful. I can go back in time, I'd do it all over again.
But Judge Stephen Dakoff remained unmoved, pointing to the senselessness of the act and the vulnerability of the victim, simply waiting at a bus stop. Though the court acknowledged that Jones came from a troubled background, including having a father in prison for murder, it was not enough to soften the outcome. But what happens when the violence erupts not between strangers, but behind closed doors, between two people who once promised to love each other for life? Case number 10, Danita Randy Putnam. Danita Randy Putnam, a 28-year-old woman from Bedford Heights, was involved in a tragic incident, a heated argument that led to the death of her husband, Joseph Putnam III. The couple had 4 children, and the fatal argument between them was reportedly triggered by the emotional toll of a recent miscarriage. In the heat of the confrontation, Danita fatally stabbed her husband, an act that would change the lives of everyone involved. During the sentencing hearing, Danita pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and expressed deep remorse for her actions. She was visibly distraught, crying and trembling as she apologized to Joseph's family, acknowledging the enormity of the loss. But despite the severity of the crime, an unexpected turn came when Joseph's family surprisingly pleaded for mercy on Danita's behalf.
I do love Randy. I love my nieces and my nephew, and they do need their mother. Because one half is gone, they'll never get it back, but they do have their mother. And I just feel so sorry for her, and I just pray for mercy.
They argue that while her actions were inexcusable, they could not bear the thought of losing both parents to their children. They emphasize how important it was for Danita to remain a part of their lives for the sake of the children who had already lost their father.
They've already lost their father. She stood a chance of doing 15 years to life, but I did not want her or them to lose their mother for the rest of their life. That's why we agreed that if they wanted to do a plea bargain, we could go along with it, and we would live with whatever the outcome of that is.
Judge, taking into account these pleas and the mitigating circumstances, including Danita's emotional state during the crime, sentenced her to just 4 years in prison. This was significantly less than the 15 years to life that she could have faced. The reduced sentence reflecting the complexity of the situation, with the judge considering both the tragedy of the crime and the desire to keep Danita involved in her children's lives. Meanwhile, Danita's children were placed in the care of family members during her incarceration, ensuring that they would still have some sense of family stability in the wake of their father's death. If you found these cases intriguing, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the most shocking moments in criminal history. Let us know in the comments which case stood out the most to you, and if there's a courtroom moment you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.